Welcome to this tutorial for the F-117 Nighthawk for MSFS. Today I'll cover a full flight which I planned as usual in the world map before loading in. Let's jump inside and go fly. Before we take off we need to configure the autopilot panel. All we need to do is switch on the autopilot's nav mode on the pedestal to the left of the pilot's knee, and we'll make sure the third switch on that row is in the center position. Heading over to the MFD, just flick it over to HSI mode, select sequence, and our world map flight plan will appear. Hit auto and the plane will follow that plan. That's all we need to do. Parking brake off, throttles to full, and we'll rotate in the Nighthawk at about 160 knots. Once we have a positive rate, we'll raise the landing gear and the fly-by-wire will activate at around 400 feet. Maintain a climb pitch and reduce throttle immediately after takeoff to keep the airplane at a sensible maneuvering speed. Manually start to follow your flight plan as shown on the MFD. Continue flying the airplane manually, which is very easy thanks to the fly-by-wire, until you're in a wings level position following your nav path. Once you are in that wings level position, it's very important that you level off for the next stage of flight. So just pitch that nose down gently. Once you're straight and level, head down to the autopilot panel. Now activate the autopilot master and nav hold mode on the glare shield. The airplane should now follow your nav path while maintaining a climb attitude. Once the airplane is stable in this configuration, you can bring the throttles back to full. The airplane will continue to climb and follow the route. We'll also take a quick look at how to monitor your progress during your flight. To check your progress as you climb, you'll see the waypoint number shown on the MFD incrementing, and your next waypoint will be shown on the HUD alongside a reducing distance to go. When we reach top of climb, we'll once again need to be very careful when operating the autopilot. First, we'll disable it. We'll then gently pitch the airplane down to level flight. And then once we are level, we can return to the autopilot panel. On that panel, we will flick the pitch hold mode to altitude and reactivate the autopilot master. The airplane will buck up and down slightly as it levels off, but the pendulum effect will reduce quickly. This is why it's important we're as level as possible before setting altitude hold. You will need to quickly disable and re-enable nav hold mode on the glare shield at this point to continue following the route. A stable cruise in the Nighthawk is about Mach 0.9. Your indicated airspeed will vary with altitude. If you're at high altitude, this could read as low as 250 knots, but Mach number will remain the same at 0.9. Now, just for fun, let's rewind a bit and see what happens if you don't level off before you activate the autopilot altitude hold. So we're in a climb, we head down to the autopilot panel and directly activate altitude hold. Almost immediately, the plane pitches violently and we find ourselves in a spin. I believe this is caused by a combination of the Nighthawk's odd shape and flight dynamics, and of course the dodgy default MSFS autopilot. These spins are recoverable with firm pitch, roll, rudder and throttle input, as we see here, but it's best to avoid them entirely, which you can do if you carefully follow the procedures shown in this tutorial video. Now let's fast forward and return to our actual flight, where we find ourselves stable at cruise and at top of descent. To descend, we head down to the autopilot panel and return the pitch mode switch to its center position. We now gently pitch the nose down to about 5 degrees or so, making sure the autopilot remains engaged and idling the throttle. Again, make sure your inputs are gentle and that autopilot remains engaged during this maneuver. A stable descent in the Nighthawk is between 200 and 300 knots or so and roughly 2,000 feet per minute. At bottom of descent, we once again bring the nose to a level attitude. And then once level, we can head down to the autopilot panel where we'll flick the pitch mode to altitude hold. The airplane will of course buck slightly, but no worries. It will level off very quickly. Return your throttle to roughly half power, now we're level, just to maintain a sensible airspeed for this phase of flight. For reference, my throttle position is shown here. Once ATC asks you to contact approach, or at about 30 miles out, idle the throttle and begin decelerating to approach speed. Below 250 knots, drop the landing gear. Approach speed in the Nighthawk is about 160 to 190 knots, so set your throttle to maintain this speed. Localizer following in this plane is awful, so we're going to fly a manual approach, disengage autopilot and turn towards the airport. As you descend, just idle or manage the throttle to maintain your approach speed. In this video I'm intentionally flying a really steep approach, aiming the velocity vector for about halfway down the runway at the top end of the approach speed envelope, as the Nighthawk has a feature which enables it to stop very quickly indeed after a high speed touchdown. As we get close to the runway, our airspeed and vertical speed is pretty high. We flare just before touchdown, make sure that throttle is idle and deploy the drag chute as the wheels make contact with the tarmac. The chute comfortably brings the Nighthawk to a stop before the end of the runway, and as we brake once we've slowed down, the drag chute is automatically stowed. So that concludes our Nighthawk tutorial. If you found this informative or entertaining, please drop a like and subscribe for regular videos like this. Put any questions you have in the comments below and I'll try my best to get to them. Take care, and I'll see you next time.